Hello everybody, this is Johns Hopkins with Baltimore Heritage, and we're back with another of our 5-Minute Histories videos. And today I'm down on Calvert Street outside of the Clarence Mitchell Courthouse, but we're not going to be outside for long. You see, the chief judge who's in charge of administering the building has kindly allowed us to go inside and film one of the most special rooms inside, a room that I bet even those of us who dutifully report for jury duty each year, many of us have not been inside, and that is the Museum of Baltimore Legal History. Don't worry, this video is not going to be a dry rundown of chief jurists of the state of Maryland. Rather, we're going to talk about some of this former orphans court's fantastic historic features. I'm thrilled that I'm going to be joined by a gentleman, Derek Vanderwall, who is with the museum. But before we go inside and join Derek, let's say a word or two about the building itself. There's been a courthouse here for over 200 years. This building opened in 1900. It was designed by the firm Wyatt and Knowlton, and I know you know two other of their great works, the Pikesville Armory and the 5th Regiment Armory. And here they spared no expense. The building itself is a full city block, and for example, the entrance behind me, those 8 ionic columns, each one is 31 feet high, 7 feet taller than the columns of the U.S. Capitol, if you're comparing, and each weighs 35 tons. They're made of a single slab of marble, making them the largest monolithic marble columns in America, likely in the world. The building was functionally designed very well as well. It's got offices ringing the perimeter, and then the courtrooms in the middle where it was quieter. And it survived the 1904 fire, to nobody's surprise. It is made entirely of steel and stone. The only wood in here are little pieces of decorative trim here and there. I want to wrap up with a word about its name. It is the Clarence Mitchell Courthouse. It was dedicated in 1985 to Clarence Mitchell, a Baltimorean, born and bred, and a civil rights activist. He was the chief lobbyist for the NAACP, and among many, many other things, he was instrumental in getting passed the 1964 Civil Rights Act that prohibits discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, and national origin, as well as the 1966 Voting Rights Act that did away with the Jim Crow era barriers to voting. And with that, let's go inside and take a look at the museum and join up with Derek Vanderwall. Here we go.
Thank you, Johns. My name is Derek Vanderwall, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to the Museum of Baltimore Legal History here in room 243 of the Clarence M. Mitchell Jr. Courthouse. The museum is housed in the former orphans courtroom, which was used from 1900 to 1977. The orphans courtroom moved to a different location, and this courtroom fell into disrepair, and it was used as a storage space for several years. That is until two individuals, Judge James F. Schneider and General Philip Sherman, decided this would be a great space for a museum. And so those two, as well as some other groups, they pulled the resources, they gathered money, and founded the Museum of Baltimore Legal History in 1984. And their intent was not only to preserve history, but provide a space to showcase that history and educate the public. So the museum is home to many original features of the orphans courtroom as it was constructed in 1900. And many have said that this room has the feeling of an English tap room with the embellishment of a French drawing room. And when you look around the room, you can see why. These walls are covered with wood paneling. It's mahogany that was imported from the West Indies. The bench behind me is the original bench, and that's also made from carved mahogany. And the beautifully laid parquet floor that we're standing on is also original, and it was constructed from oak from a ship. We don't know which ship or what kind of ship, but I like to imagine that it was one of the clipper ships that Baltimore is so known for. And then behind the bench, we have this beautiful 4-panel mural. So in 1907, the Maryland chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution commissioned a French painter by the name of Jean-Paul Laurens to produce this mural for the courtroom. Laurens did not come cheap. He was paid $13,000 for his service, which in today's dollars would be over $400,000. Laurens is probably better known for painting the interior of the Paris City Hall as well as the apse of the Paris Pantheon. Laurens painted this mural in his studio in Paris, and it took him 3 years to complete. And 2 years into the work, we actually almost lost the mural because Laurens' studio was located on the banks of the Seine River in Paris. The river flooded, and he was able to save the murals at the last minute by hoisting them up above the waterline. So the mural was completed in 1910 and shipped to the United States via New York and then installed here with a lot of celebration. The mural depicts the surrender of the British forces under Lord Charles Cornwallis on October 19, 1781 in Yorktown, Virginia. And as we move from left to right, we see the British and the Hessian soldiers lining up to surrender their arms. And then we eventually reach General O'Hara, who is surrendering Lord Cornwallis' sword to General Washington. Now, above the murals are located 3 coats of arms, all from individuals who were present at the siege of Yorktown. And prominently displayed in the center is the coat of arms for George Washington himself. Now, you've probably seen this coat of arms on the flag of Washington, D.C., but many don't realize that the full coat of arms actually features a crown with a raven inside of it. Now, around the museum are housed artifacts such as a grandfather clock that was installed in the city's first orphans' court in 1810. We also have a copper drum that was used to randomly select jurors, and that drum was used until the 1960s. We have the original court opinion from 1885 ruling that black lawyers couldn't be denied the right to practice law in the city's courts. Then we also have 2 judicial robes of 2 of our famous firsts. Now, the black robe you'll see belonged to E. Everett Lane, who was the first African American appointed to a court of record in Baltimore, in the state of Maryland, actually. When in 1957 he was appointed to the judge of the People's Court. But he had several other firsts before that. Before he was on the People's Court, Judge Lane was the first African American appointed as a police magistrate in 1952, and he was also the first African American appointed to the Traffic Court in 1955. And then located at the front of the museum is the scarlet robe of former Chief Judge of the Court of Appeals, Robert M. Bell. Now, you'll notice that this robe is unique because it's scarlet. And Maryland is unique in that it is the only state in the United States in which its highest court, for those justices, they wear scarlet robes. Now, a few words on Chief Judge Bell. So he was a graduate of Dunbar High School in Baltimore. He attended Morgan State College and then eventually earned a JD from Harvard Law School. And he has served at every level of the judiciary until he was appointed as Chief Judge of the Court of Appeals from 1996 to 2013. Now, his first encounters with the legal system actually occurred while he was still a high school student. So on June 17th, 1960, just a young Bell, a student at Dunbar High School, and several of his classmates staged a sit-in protest at Hooper's Restaurant in downtown Baltimore, which was segregated. The students were asked to leave, they refused, and they were subsequently arrested. They were fined $10 each and found guilty. They challenged their convictions, and that case went all the way up to the state's highest court, the Court of Appeals, where they were represented by such prominent attorneys including Juanita Jackson Mitchell and Thurgood Marshall. The court ultimately upheld those convictions, and then it was taken to the United States Supreme Court. And after some more procedural issues, ultimately the convictions came back to the state's highest court, and those convictions were overturned, and the students were cleared of all charges. The museum was recently renamed and dedicated in honor of the late Judge Schneider, who was one of the founders of this museum. And today it's operated by a joint effort of the Baltimore Courthouse and Law Museum Foundation, the Historical Committee of the Bar Association for Baltimore City, as well as the Maryland Judiciary. We're open on weekdays from 12:30 to 1:30 p.m. Whenever we have volunteers, and admission is always free. And we're always looking for more volunteers. So if you would like to see these artifacts in person, or you'd like to be trained as a volunteer docent, you can contact us through our Facebook page, or come visit us here in room 243 of the Mitchell Courthouse.